Hello, hello. Good afternoon and good evening, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us. My name is Hannah Sloan, and I am delighted to be your host for this edition of A Picture a Minute, brought to you by the Photographic Arts Council, Los Angeles. Thank you all for being here. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that I'm speaking from Tavangar, currently referred to as Los Angeles, on the ancestral and unceded land of the Tongva people, also known as the Gabrielino Tongva. I honor their enduring presence and pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and future. As this is an online event, I invite those joining us to reflect on the Indigenous peoples whose unceded land you may occupy today. Before we dive into today's exciting program, it is my pleasure to welcome PAC LA's president and my wonderful colleague of 20 years, Michael Dawson.
Thank you, Hannah. The Photographic Arts Council Los Angeles is a nonprofit organization devoted to the medium of photography. We gather and engage experts and curious newcomers in conversation about the ways photography connects and enriches our community. In 2025, we launched Year of the Woman, a series of flagship public educational events celebrating notable women in fine art photography. We recently opened an office and gallery space at the Reef in downtown Los Angeles, currently featuring the work of Paula Chamley, Austin Irving, Aaron Springer, and Margot Walter in the exhibition Broken Ground, curated by Ryan McIntosh. Support for PAC LA comes from the Leonian Foundation, Herb Ritts Foundation, East Museum Los Angeles, Los Angeles County Department of Arts and Culture, California Arts Council, and our membership. Thank you, Marjorie Ornston, for creating A Picture a Minute at PAC LA. Thank you, Sean Kennedy, board member Michael Hawley, and especially Hannah Sloan for organizing this afternoon's event. Your energy and enthusiasm is deeply appreciated.
All right, thank you so much, Michael. To all of you tuning in, thank you for joining us and taking part in this live experience. You are truly in for a treat. Our lineup of presenters is my dream team of artists, curators, writers, art critics included, collectors, publishers, arts professionals, and culture makers, each invited because I really admire their unique perspectives and the ways they contribute to photography, the broader art ecosystem, and to life on Earth in general. Some of our presenters you will know and are widely known for their long-standing contributions to the field of photography, while others represent a new generation of artists, gallerists, and thinkers who I believe will shape photography for decades to come. How's that for pressure? To our brilliant presenters, I'm genuinely humbled and honored by your participation. Thank you so much for taking your time to be here and being part of this collective celebration of women in photography. I'm also thankful to the leadership of the Photographic Arts Council for the opportunity to host and produce this year's edition, and for their continued efforts and commitment to photography and amplifying women's contributions in the field through events like these. At this very uncertain and scary time in our world, I continue to find hope in these moments when we come together as a community to celebrate the photographic medium as a powerful, lasting, and indispensable tool for storytelling and change. With that, I'd like to go to the first slide of Agnes Varda. A Picture a Minute is inspired by the work of Agnes Varda, a pioneering filmmaker, photographer, and visual artist whose career spanned more than 6 decades. Often called the godmother of the French New Wave, Varda brought a deeply human, playful, and radically curious approach to image making and storytelling. Next slide. The template for our event is Varda's 1980s television series Une Minute pour une Image, a program built on a simple but profound idea that a single image, given 1 minute of focused attention, can reveal layers of meaning, emotion, and lived experience. Varda's work reminds us to slow down, look closely, and trust the intelligence of both image and audience. Next slide, please. In that spirit, this year's edition introduces a small but intentional pause. For each presentation you are about to hear, we will first display an image in silence for 5 seconds, allowing you time to form your own impressions. I will then call on our presenters, who will each have around 60 seconds to reflect on their selected image. There will be no Q&A, no discussion, just a flow of images and presenters sharing their impressions for you to enjoy. While this is an exciting live event, it's also something that will continue to live on, which I'm so grateful for. A recording will be archived on PAC LA's YouTube channel, creating a lasting resource for future viewers and photography enthusiasts, an invitation to discover and rediscover dozens of women photographers they may never have encountered before. So, we invite you to grab your favorite beverage, kick off your shoes, settle in, and enjoy our presentation. Let's get started and put up the first slide. From my hometown of San Diego, Kara Felt.
U-boats exemplifies the close-up views of ships and naval equipment that Florence B. Kemmler produced around San Diego in the 1920s and 1930s. Industry and nature collide in her frame. The matte surfaces, hard metallic planes, and strategically engineered angles of submarines cutting across fluid, glimmering water. The lack of horizon adds to a feeling of claustrophobia, fittingly for the subject. In her attention to military might, Kemmler typifies a moment in photography when many artists embraced hard-edged imagery of industrial objects. Fusing modernism and soft-focused pictorialist photography, a lingering influence in California, Kemmler gives machine-age content a more diffuse, even ethereal presentation. Stamps on this print's verso reveal that it traveled widely to exhibitions around the world in the 30s. U-boats is a striking photograph that speaks to how San Diego photographers synthesized local subjects with international artistic currents, contributing to global networks of exchange and display.
Next slide. From Culver City, Alex Fierro.
I chose this opportunity to share a local LA emerging artist. Sylvie Nagy is a queer Albanian educator, artist, researcher, and writer. They were the recent artists in residence at the Feminist Center for Creative Work, a nonprofit with a communal exhibition space in Atwater Village. Nagy described the performative aspect of the work, utilizing red clay balls, their body. The work formulated as a monumental, double-sided recording. The works towered over us. We weaved in between the undulating works, delicately activated by our movement. Some works included embroidery detailed by their mother with red beading. There's so much to Sylvie Nagy's work that can't be explained in a minute. I encourage you to look into their work further, as well as visiting the Feminist Center for Creative Work if you're ever here in LA.
Currently in beautiful Carmel, California, Alex Woodside.
This is an image by Maud Arsenault, a French-Canadian artist out of Montreal. It is a self-portrait titled Folds and Wrinkles, and I chose it because it's beautiful, but it also goes beyond this idea of aging gracefully or embracing imperfections. I really like that there's a tension in her face. There's like active emotion, which could be a lot of different things. It could be anger, frustration, could be, laughing, ecstasy even. She could be making a birthday wish. I just like the possibilities of it. And I think it speaks to a range of emotion and the female experience, the human experience, and the beauty of embracing it all.
From snowy Santa Fe, New Mexico, Alia Malley.
Thanks, Hannah. Hi, I'm Alia. I am an artist. I am a perfumer, and I am also a horse girl. And actually, all three of those things go together because horses also exist in a world beyond words. So I chose this image by Siri Kaur, my good friend, because she captures this magic that I'm about to describe in a single photograph. So trying to put this thing that is beyond words into words is really, really hard. So I'm going to rely here on some lines taken from the poem The Shy Mare, written by one of my favorite Zen teachers and writers, Henry Shukman. So here we go, from The Shy Mare. If you just get still enough, let your breath go quiet enough, then the world will turn toward you the way the shy mare in the old stable turned the large, cloudy marble of her eye on me in the twilight under the rafters. She stepped up and slowly she swung her long head toward my lifted hand and breathed long and quiet with her big nostrils over my skin. Thank you.
In San Francisco, Ali Hoisline.
I had the opportunity to collaborate with Rosemary Cromwell on our final exhibition at Pier 24 Photography in San Francisco. And this picture is part of a body of work that she made over a 7-year period in Havana, Cuba. The project was inspired by the city's kind of underground lottery system in which people select their numbers using these little booklets called charada, which is a guide that assigns numbers to kind of everyday objects, people, or scenes that you might find around you. And that belief in finding meaning in the ordinary really shaped how Rose ultimately worked over those 7 years in Havana. Sometimes she's photographing the world as it unfolds around her, and other times she's recreating some of these moments that she previously experienced. And each time I entered Rose's gallery during the exhibition, it was this incredibly vibrant and playful installation. My attention would immediately settle on this particular image. For a brief moment, it kind of brought me this sense of calm before my very overbearing type A instincts pulled me back into the pace of the workday. And I find myself feeling transported into the scene. This idea of trying to find a sliver of light beneath the trees, pausing and lifting my face toward the light. It felt like a reminder to savor the small daily joys that I so quickly rush past. And so while I miss Pier 24 every day, I am still grateful to have this image and the exceptional book from which it is drawn close at hand. Thank you.
And in Echo Park, Amelia Lang.
When I moved back to the Bay Area in 2020, I became preoccupied with images of California, perhaps a search for ways to connect with and understand this place. I came across this photograph by Mimi Plum during that period of fascination. It's included in her book White Sky, published by Stanley Barker in 2020. It's a straightforward photograph with an equally straightforward title, Boys in Tires, Sears Point, 1976. But as I looked more closely, I began to identify quintessential California symbols. Discarded tires fill the frame, almost like wallpaper behind the 4 kids. The full bleed pattern-like background creates the impression of an endless heap of waste. The tire, of course, points to our love of the automobile and the freedom and expansiveness it offers, the access to awe. But I can't look at this pile without thinking of our oil dependency, environmental disasters, the politics of extraction, both past and present. The kids, in contrast, at least to me, symbolize innocence. They are preteens. It's pre-internet, and they seem free. Free from supervision, phones, and responsibility. It's a simple but great California photograph, one with signs of both despair and hope.
In beautiful Los Angeles, Arlene Mejerado.
This artwork is called Continuum of Something That No Longer Exists. It was made in 2024 by Jamal Baldwin. It is a C print and is about 50 inches by 240 inches, which is about 4 feet by 20 feet. The image was conceived from an experience Jamal had in 2018. Him and his mother came across an old roll of film that had not been developed by his late father while moving, and his mother volunteered to have the roll developed at their local Walmart. Unfortunately, the photo lab disposed the negatives after they were developed, and so Baldwin reckoned with this loss through recreating a kind of destroyed negative so as to work within the gap of loss. Jamal and his mom did receive a CD of the discolored and decayed photos, which became the reference for his creation. In the piece, Jamal contemplates the nonlinearity of time and the fluidity of memory while also reflecting the distortion, decay, and vividness of memories and lost archives. I've seen this print in person in two different iterations. Here, it's uniquely installed in an accordion-like fold, suspended perpendicularly, and only allowing for parts of the print to be fully visible. And it's um, and it's inviting you to move around it and to experience it from different angles. Currently, this photograph is actually on view in two different exhibitions at the Luckman Gallery by Lace and also at Santa Monica College by Photo SoCal.
In Echo Park, Britt Salveson.
What is all this masculinity doing in a program focused on women? According to the LACMA database in this caption, we're looking at a photograph taken by a man of a suit of armor made by male artisans for a 16th century king to parade his power and wealth. But there's more to the story. In fact, the photograph was made by Jane Clifford, who ran a professional studio in Madrid following the death of her husband, Charles. Jane was accomplished. She was the first woman admitted to the prestigious French Society of Photography in 1856. It was Jane who gained access to the Spanish royal armory through her female patron, Queen Isabella II, and earned a commission to document dozens of objects like this suit of armor. And it was Jane who sold a print to the Victoria and Albert, a museum founded by another queen and now home to a special initiative for women in photography. Today, we like to say that the future is female. Maybe so is the past. So if you'll excuse me, I have to update our database to reflect that accurately.
In Houston, Texas, Catherine Couturier.
I picked Deanna and Doom from Sally Mann's series at 12. It's in my office at the gallery and always sort of makes me laugh like, okay, what's going to happen today? It is for sure Doom. I think Doom is always right around the corner if you're paying attention, but it's more than that. I remember being the age Deanna is in this photograph. I remember feeling those big feelings for the first time when I was trapped somewhere between adolescence and adulthood. I remember my parents telling me to take that look off my face. I remember that everything was either heaven or hell, amazing or horrible, and every heartbreak was forever. I was doomed. The funny thing is, when I was looking up the specifics of the piece, I saw that Doom was actually the name of Iana's dog. That makes it all the more perfect because the doom I sometimes feel, just like everything I felt when I was in that in between age, really isn't the end of the world at all. It's just the name given to something we can't see that's just out of frame. Thank you.
In New York City, Christian Patterson.
In her series, mother figure artist Kat Bodden invites others to pose with her as a stand-in for their mother or other maternal or caregiving figure. The photographs capture a range of experiences: attachment and security, tension and neglect, intimacy, eroticism, drawing inspiration from psychodrama. The photographs hover between documentary and fantasy, personal history, and performance. Mother figure also reflects both Bawden's subjects and her own experience, her internal conflict over not having biological children, her curiosity about forms of mothering that are different from parenthood, being someone like a mother figure to her sometimes younger artist peers, and entering the role of caregiver to her elderly parents. We all have mothers and we all need care. And as we go through life, our needs and understandings of what a mother is or can be, and our needs for care change as well. Kat Bawden's mother figure beautifully explores this. Thank you.
In Tulum, Mexico, Dana Sorman.
I'm Dana. I build time machines. In my research, I came across this image from the laboratory of Helga Sorribes in Switzerland. These are neurons grown outside of the brain on a piece of etched glass by way of photolithography. I thought, wow, what a beautiful and fascinating example of how non-local intelligence works. It also reminded me of how photograms are often presented as a magic trick. Look, a photograph made without a camera, neurons made outside of the brain. Because the camera is always a proxy for us. We are the observers who render objects inside reality, and it happens along the perimeter of what we can see in the dark.
In San Francisco, David Mahoney.
This print was listed at a regional auction house in Seattle with very little information about it other than the date, the title, and the artist's name, which I had never seen before. It clearly fit within the pictorialist style of its time, and the distinctive aesthetic of the image appeared to me to be highly influenced by Japanese design. I bought it with the idea that I would figure out the story behind it at some point. What a story that turned out to be. Ella Etna McBride was born in Albia, Iowa in 1862 and came west with her family in 1867. By 1894, she was the principal of a school in Portland with an unusual hobby for a woman of her time, mountain climbing. In 1897, during a climb of Mount Rainier, she met the photographer Edward Curtis, who then spent years trying to recruit her to manage his Seattle studio. McBride finally agreed in 1907 and managed the studio for a decade before leaving to form her own. She was not, at this point, a photographer herself, but ran the studio while the mainstay portraiture work was done by her partners, including 3 talented Issei artists from the local community. Encouraged by her partners to try her hand, she entered local salons in the early 1920s when she was in her late 50s. By 1925, McBride was one of the most widely exhibited photographers worldwide. The peak of her success came in 1927, when it was noted that she was the 4th most exhibited artist in the US and Canada, with 71 prints included in 21 exhibitions. While her salon activity largely came to a halt by 1930, her commercial studio continued to be successful through her retirement in 1954, when she was over 90 years old. Ironically, McBride's long life was a factor in why we have forgotten her. When she died at age 102 with no children or siblings, the archives for her long career were held in storage by her business partner. However, having outlived her reputation, no permanent home could be found for the negatives and prints, which were then destroyed. It's estimated that only about 150 of McBride's prints survived. I marvel at this fragile object, created by a mountain climbing artist and businesswoman from the 1920s, and I celebrate its unlikely survival. While we more typically think of images as information, especially when transmitted in electronic form, a photographic print is a physical thing that contains its own history and its own stories if we look carefully enough. As its current caretaker, I'm grateful for the story that the Magic Vase has revealed.
In Spalding Square, Los Angeles, Deborah Ermis.
Consider Sold by Susan Silton. It's the first work from her Stripes project. The image, a house, probably recently sold, is being tented for termite mitigation. It first appeared as a billboard on Wilshire Boulevard near Fairfax, down the street from where there were two and today 3 museums. It was 2004, a presidential election year. The red, white, and blue stripes, although wider and of slightly different tones than those in the American flag, nevertheless insinuate furled bunting, the kind seen at old-fashioned political events. As money has infested the American democratic process, the juxtaposed text and image clearly purport that our democracy is being sold. The pleasure and underlying terror of visual information is a pursuit in Silton's practice, whether photo-based or performative. Next month, when a permanent public artwork from the Stripes project is installed at the forthcoming Wilshire Fairfax Metro station, the challenge will be to read between and behind the lines.
From Santa Monica, Douglas Marshall.
Carlotta Corcoran was a luminary of American abstract photography and a key figure of Bauhaus-influenced photography in Texas. Her early photographs, such as this one, investigated how light transforms natural objects, but in later projects, she took light itself as her subject, winning the adoration of her pioneering contemporaries like Moholy-Nagy, Stieglitz, and Georgi Kepes, with whom she remained close friends. I've always loved finding connective tissue between different artists across generations. Made in 1944, Corcoran's Nature Dancer bears a striking resemblance to Barbara Morgan's iconic photograph of dancer Martha Graham titled Letter to the World, made just a few years before in 1940. As a native Texan myself, where Corcoran spent most of her life, making a decades-long impact at the Texas Women's University, I was happy to share her work as part of the debut exhibitions at my gallery in 2021. I've always enjoyed thinking about how radical her vision and methodology as a single woman and feminist in mid-century Texas must have been. Too long left in obscurity within the history of photography, I'm thrilled that the Smithsonian's Hirshhorn Museum will open a major exhibition of her photographs next month, and that Carlotta's special work might finally get the wider recognition it deserves.
From her studio in Chinatown, Elena Dorfman.
This is an image by Tacita Dean, a British contemporary artist and someone whose work I've been following for many years. As you can see, this piece is titled Sakura, and it's unique. I became familiar with her work through her films, but she works in many mediums, including photography and drawing, which she often melds. Here she's used colored pencil on this very monumental image. I was drawn to this work not only because it's beautiful and arresting, but also because she's presented a quotidian scene in and made it extraordinary. The image made me stop and move in closer and also consider the importance of the cherry blossom tree in Japanese culture and also the fleeting nature of the blossom itself. Although this is different from other work of hers I've seen, Sakura is aligned with her practice of working slowly and by hand, with a focus on natural forms and issues of time and memory that reveal the tensions between what's fleeting and what endures. Thank you.
In unceded and occupied land, originally still inhabited and cared for by Tongva, Tataviam, Serrano, Keith, and Chumash peoples, Erica Hirugami.
Agnes Varda's Reclamando las Greñas was last on public view in the exhibition El Cuerpo, The Performing Body, and the photographic stage curated by photographer Cristina Fernandez at Gallery Luisani in the summer of 2024. The artwork depicts a contact sheet in a meta self-referential series of 12 self-portraits that place Ortiz as the axis of the visual conversation. Reclamando las Greñas challenges beauty ideals in that it confronts the ever-present societal policing of individual hair strands in both the redhead and the coily, kinky, curly hair communities. Furthermore, this intimate depiction delves into socioeconomic commentary that is visually apparent with the juxtaposition of low-cost hair products as contrasted to expensive hair tools. Thus, Ortiz, a Chicana photographer of Mexican-Honduran heritage, utilizes Reclamando las Greñas to aesthetically codify rituals to self, to serve as a reminder of self-love, tenderness, care, and acceptance, which under the current political climate is defiant in that it culturally celebrates the Latina and Chicanx community.
From San Jose, Costa Rica, Erica Martin.
When a woman falls in love with a banano de pura sangre belongs to the series Venas Abiertas, Open Veins by visual artist of Panamanian descent, Rachel Mossman, who works between Brooklyn and Panama City. I direct allusion to Eduardo Galeano's book, Las Venas Abiertas de América Latina, Open Veins of Latin America. This group of photographs that she describes as performance for the camera gives voice to the complex and unpleasant story of U.S. policy in Central America, the border between Mexico and the United States, and towards Latino people within the U.S. This series is an invitation to learn and acknowledge the unfortunate yet ongoing interventionism of the United States in Latin American territories, the extraction of their resources, and the impact on the development of their politics and history. In this particular image, the banana symbolizes the presence of the United Fruit Company in Central America from the late 19th century to the mid-20th century, earning it the term Banana Republic. Through the ownership of vast banana plantations, the United Fruit Company controlled local economies and politics, often with more power than governments. The woman in the photo, who is Rachel's mother, holds the banana as if it were something precious, like a baby or a lover. Poetically and beautifully, Mossman addresses a problematic and painful relationship with humor. Thank you.
In West Hollywood, Ignacio Darnaud.
Our Lady of the Iguanas is my favorite image by the great Mexican photographer Graciela Iturbide, who is now 83 years old. So starting in 1979, Graciela spent nearly a decade with the Zapotec Indians, a community in Juchitán, Mexico, where women dominate all aspects of social life, including enjoying sexual freedom. This image in particular portrays one of those women, Sobeida Diaz, who she sold live iguanas for stews and tamales in a market where men were not allowed. What I love about this image is its transcendence. Gabriela shot Sobeida from below, giving her a majestic look that turns her into a symbol of the dignity and strength of the Zapotec women. And the iguanas surrounding her head are in the shape of a halo that gives the scene a religious, surreal, and even a mythological aura. In fact, the locals call her the Juchitán Medusa. The final result is a subject that becomes timeless and a feminist manifesto, and in my opinion, a true icon of photography.
In Santa Monica, Jim Gans.
Taiwanese photographer Annie Wang's series, The Mother as a Creator, is a powerful meditation on motherhood, identity, and artistic agency. In each photograph, Wang and her son pose in front of the blow-up of the previous photograph in the series. The time tunnel effect places the images in dialogue and emphasizes the changes and continuities in their relationship over time. I find this one, number 11, the second to last, called Long Distance Relationship, especially poignant. It captures a moment of connection and coming of age. The son is grown, 18 or 19 now, engaged in his own world, while Wang remains present, yet no longer the central caretaker. This image underscores the series arc. Motherhood is not static, it's an evolving process. The entire series is on view at the Getty Museum through January 18th. Thank you.
From Chicago, Illinois, Kelly Connell.
Now I understand why Saiichi Furuya continually re-edits photographs he made of his wife, Christine Gosler. As time moves on, so does our understanding of someone. I imagine that Saiichi's camera became so familiar to Christine that she didn't even think twice about his continual snapping. Christine Gosler, Venice, 1985, photographed a few months before her death. The suffering she wears is as real as her clothes. Her stockings, her turtleneck, the wallpaper are all shades of the sun. She is letting herself relax in its warmth, to be witnessed in her pain, a momentary peace. Dedicated to his memory of Christine, each edit represents a new understanding as Saiichi continues to make sense of their life through the ever-changing lens of time.
In Minneapolis, Minnesota, Laurel Rand Lewis.
Rosa Barba is an Italian filmmaker whose work explores the boundaries of documentary and fictional narratives. Her films often explore human-made interventions on the natural world. This image, from Source to Poem, is a still from a 2016 film of the same name. It shows the Mojave Solar Project, a concentrated solar power station located 20 miles northwest of Barstow. Instead of a field of photovoltaic cells, which one might expect from a solar power plant, MSP is made of several mirror arrays that concentrate sunlight and heat onto a central receiver. Barba has captured the receiver at either dusk or dawn as it's lit up in a wash of light from the mirrors. What I love most about this image is the ambiguity seen in it. Is the tower receiving the light or emitting it? The industrial space is alone in the desert, giving it an almost desolate environment, but the light acts as a strange beacon, pulling you into the image. The Mojave Solar Project also acts as a site for renewable energy, harnessing the sun, yet its nearly 2,000-acre footprint has irrevocably changed the natural desert landscape on which it sits. Barba's image, to me, presents a very complex vision of human consumption. Even in our search for sustainability, we always continue to destroy.
In San Diego, Leah Ullman.
This child is a witness to wonder, to beauty, to death. I'm enthralled by birds and always want to see them closer and to see them stilled so I can take in the fullness of their forms and the patterns of their feathers. But to see them closer and more still is to see them absent of life and the natural motion of life. This photograph is from a series of pictures that Modica took of a family in the slaughterhouse business. The 4 children in this family lived daily with death. This child, in this moment, and in who knows how many other moments in the day or week or month, is pushed from behind onto another tier of recognizing what death looks like. That motion is arising and lowering at once. This picture hangs in my living room, just above the chair I read in every morning. I look at the picture before I sit down and know I am that child, that maybe we're all that child when we don't look away, when we can take in beauty, wonder, and mortality all at once.
In Santa Monica, Loretta Ayeroff.
Oh, I didn't see myself. In 1972, I shared a loft in Soho, New York City, at 333 Broome Street. Inside, there were two plywood enclosures, one, the kitchen, and two, the darkroom. Jim and Dina slept above the kitchen. I slept above the darkroom, where I was learning to make silver gelatin prints. We all slept in sleeping bags. I kept a postcard of Dorothea Lange's 1940 portrait of the migratory cotton picker from her great Farm Security Administration work in my small space. The abstract quality of it still amazes me and inspires me as it did 54 years ago. Thank you.
Reporting from beautiful downtown Winnetka, California in the exquisite North Valley, Martin Olson.
Hi, everybody. I chose Gertrude Cassibeer's photograph, The Manger, from 1899, because it was quietly revolutionary. With this image, Cassibeer rejected photography just as composition and allowed it to be an emotional art. The pristine maternal figure is presented in a mundane setting. It's a filthy barn, but the holiness there is human, tender, exhausted, and real. Cassibeer's photo also matters historically. One of the first women ever to achieve renown as a photographer, when photography was a closed men's club. She often focused on intimate subjects long dismissed as feminine or sentimental in the realm of serious art. Finally, Cassibeer didn't just photograph a moment in time. She reframed who was allowed to shape cultural meaning and how.
From Tulsa, Oklahoma, Michael Hewlett.
Sorry about that, guys. This photograph titled Sally the Horse was made earlier this year by emerging artist Aaron Springer while on assignment for the New York Times. It shows Sally Mann walking her last horse on her homestead outside Lexington, Virginia. What began as a few scheduled hours of photographing Sally turned into 4 days. Aaron moved across 750 acres with her, observing daily rituals, listening, and slowly earning her trust. On the fourth day, Aaron's flight was unexpectedly delayed, and that delay gave space for this moment to be made. Most of Sally's career has been synonymous with horses. She's often photographed in riding chaps. At 74, though, she no longer rides. Her horse is also aging and no longer able to run. And this is how they spend their time together, walking quietly side by side. What moves me most about this image is that it feels like there's a passage of time made visible. Not just Sally's, but photography's. There's a tenderness here and also a passing of the baton. Erin isn't imitating Sally's vision, she's meeting it, carrying it forward, and making something entirely her own. Thank you.
From downtown LA, Michael Pena.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to present this image by Ursula Schultz-Dornberg, made 200 feet below Uprising Square in St. Petersburg in 2000. It's one of my favorite works from this series of other Metro pictures that she made in the same place for many reasons. This one in particular shows a woman artist observing a group of men, one group, one observer, kind of in these different kinds of gazes. And I think that that kind of attention that she's providing to this scene is quite subversive in a way, and introduces all kinds of questions about the female gaze and what kinds of desires that can be encoded by the act of looking. And so as a 62-year-old woman, when she made this work, I think that's a particular point of view that she must have had. but but the work does feel very fresh and contemporary and has kind of a queer undertone to it as well, based on like the different kinds of male figures that are present in the scene. And so I'm really happy to have shared this photograph. Thank you.
Also in Los Angeles, Mike Majors.
Hello, everybody. Um, I chose this piece by Nori Rasumen Martinez. She's an incredible Asian Latina artist from the Bay Area who now predominantly shoots in Los Angeles on medium format film. I chose this piece because of how deeply inspiring it is to me. The image was created inside of a tea house for the LA Times, and it's one part of a larger body of work that takes us on a journey through the creation and sisterhood of a local dance group in LA. It has a unique softness juxtaposed by the contorted, striking shapes created by the models, and it captures the strange oxymoron feeling of motion inside stillness and stillness inside motion. The faceless figures blurred by the poetic movements that morphs the bodies into almost one entity has a very beautifully eerie and haunting essence, and the light cascading in gives this image such an ethereal and divine energy. I think that this piece also makes the viewer take a pause and step back from stereotypical patriarchal ideals and sit with the art of pole dancing and view it as exactly what it is, a dignified and masterful presentation of athleticism, grace, and beauty.
In Eagle Rock, LA, Ramon Garcia.
Ode, Ode to Necrophilia by Mexican-Hungarian photographer Kati Horna is a series from 1962 commissioned by a short-lived avant-garde literary magazine in Mexico City. It presents an enigmatic mourning ritual for a lover represented by a mask. The mask was made by Leonora Carrington, who is there and veiled and unveiled in different stages of undress. It also suggests the macabre and the occult, and it suggests some literary references also. But ultimately, it defies interpretation. It doesn't provide a clear narrative or narrative closure. It does, however, have a sense of humor. I'm drawn to its beauty. It's very haunting and poetic. I am drawn to its imaginative power, its rebellious spirit, and the manner in which it defies a patriarchal culture that is still very much with us. Thank you.
In good old LA, Ravi Rajan.
When Hannah asked me to participate in a picture a minute, this image immediately popped into my mind. It was made by the amazing photographer Heidi Bradner, who lives in London. Heidi and I connected as we were both putting up our work at the 2009 Guangzhou Photo Biennial, and several of the images she exhibited in that exhibition came from her work of seeing the first Chechen War of the mid-1990s. Heidi's images and those of others present during the conflict were instrumental in fueling the outrage against the war and its human costs, both in Russia, but also across the world. When I first saw this image, I froze, my gaze to the rebel fighters. At the time, Heidi was hanging her work in the show, and she had to walk in front of me to break my gaze, as the only voice I could hear at the time was the fighters. I still have that reaction today, 17 years later. I have a good story about this image and the Chinese Communist Party representative who needed to approve the exhibition before we opened. He banned this image. While I don't have time to tell the story today, let me know if you want to hear it, and I'd be happy to tell it at another time.
In Santa Monica, Rochelle Rich.
I was lucky enough to study with British artist Helen Chadwick before she died suddenly at the age of only 42. I was deeply inspired by her ability to consistently combine humour with a deadly serious investigation of body politics. Her work repeatedly walked the fine line between seduction and repulsion. Whether it was her sculptural piss flowers or pig entrails entwined with blonde hair or a giant chocolate fountain, or in this case, sitting naked in soft, handmade, gendered kitchen appliances for her seminal 1977 series of works, In the Kitchen. Her gaze is unapologetic and knowing. Her eyeshadow is shiny, her hair is perfect, and her message is crystal clear. I'm so sad that she didn't live longer and that we have missed out on the feminist magic she would surely have created. Helen Chadwick shows us the pleasure and power of challenging the establishment through joyful, provocative rebellion.
In Los Angeles, Rio Ash Phoenix.
This image is titled Walk 114 out of 183 by Dr. Yonwing Preston from her series With Love from an Invader. At first, it doesn't seem to give us very much. There's scraggly grass in the foreground and a dense bush occupying the center of the frame. It's a quiet, somewhat opaque scene. But there is one thing happening, which is the motion blur where the bush seems to be moving in the wind. Plants and photography both have this interesting relationship with the way we perceive time. We think of photography as having the ability to freeze time, to pluck a single moment out of it. And because of how slow they grow, we also perceive plants as static, stuck in time. But in this image, both of these things aren't quite true. The photo isn't capturing one moment, but rather a series of consecutive moments where the bush is changing and moving. This sense of duration deepens when you learn that this photograph is one of 183 images made of the same bush every other day over the course of a year. The image becomes part of a larger cycle, no longer just describing a place, but becoming a document of the artist's ritual of return. This bush is a rhododendron, and it, like the artist, is from China. The image was made in England, where the plant is considered invasive and where Dr. Preston has lived for the past 20 years. In that context, I'm struck by how the single photograph of one bush is actually holding all of these layers: movement and stillness, repetition and change, and the artist's own relationship to time, place, and belonging, all unearthed through her sustained attention to this landscape. Thanks.
In Mill Valley, California, Rosie Lakos.
When I look at this image by Mimi Plum, I don't know what I'm supposed to feel, and that's why I'm so drawn to it. And that's one of the things that I think draws us to photography, is that it is a good recorder of what is happening, but it also asks us to ask a lot of questions. It leaves us wondering. I see the beautiful sculptural form of this horse laying in the grass. I don't know if I'm supposed to feel mournful or if I'm supposed to feel happy or sad. And it doesn't really matter because it still draws me in regardless. And I, as the viewer, also add in my own experience. I spend a lot of time with horses in my own life, and I know what a fleeting moment this is. I know that in a split second, a fly could come and land on that horse and disturb its nap, or that could be that moment at the end of their life where you're kneeling next to them saying goodbye. And it doesn't matter either way. And that is, to me, one of the most beautiful things about photography, and what it gives to us is a questioning that leaves us wondering and dreaming and feeling. And that's the beauty of it. Thank you.
In the heart of downtown LA, Sheena Nees Dambrat.
Hi. Okay, so I want to say that I obviously understand that the bigger idea is to liberate this gifted artist from the burden of her sensational biographical detail being one of the many remarkable women that Pablo Picasso traumatized romantically. However, this is what happened to me. I was so blown away by a comprehensive Picasso survey at the Museum of Modern Art that it ended up inspiring me to study art history. So I get to Vassar to study art history, and the first show I see in their art gallery is a survey of work by Dora Maar and some of her contemporaries. And I thought, I guess my education has already started. And so it stuck with me, and I worked in that gallery. It was my job, and I spent a lot of time with these images and fell in love with them on the merits, which include but are not limited to her absolutely rigorous study and embrace of both painting and photography, her practice that included the broad spectrum of everything you can do with a camera, from commercial to photojournalistic to experimental and avant-garde work, her seminal presence among like second generation surrealists in Europe who were dealing with the onset of modernity and the terrors of one war ended, another coming. And a lot of her generation kind of like felt like they wanted to burn it all down and start again. They were skeptical of the pictorial legacy of beauty as being perhaps not sophisticated or futuristic enough to meet this harsh new moment. And what I love about her is that she did all of that, but kept this paradigm of poetic, lyrical beauty alive through painstaking handcraft and elevated technique. And I remain as obsessed with her today as I was in 1993.
In Glassell Park, LA, Siri Carr.
It's the year of the horse, everyone. This image by Pia Paulina Gilmeth from 2024 is titled, I'd look like a flower if I could. The picture is a visual conundrum, an enigma. I'm a rabid fan of both mystery novels and horse-based mythical creatures, and this image contains both. How can I believe what my eyes tell me? I can't understand, and I luxuriate in this not knowing. We see the edge of the 4x5 film with words that say Kodak 320 Tri-X pan. These technical 20th century details sit alongside the impossible, a burning house from a Bergman film and a majestic white horse that looks like all of the all of the unicorns from my childhood fantasies. This fever dream seems sent from a land I half remember, a place where I'm half asleep and half awake, a place I want to return to again and again. I too would look like a flower if I could. Thank you.
In Los Angeles, Sophie Winner.
Hi. I was first introduced to the series Girls when I had just begun studying photography, and I felt as every girl in the room unanimously fell in love with each image. Curlin depicts the stage of life that we were in, capturing the affinity between girls in this liminal moment between adolescence and adulthood when you simultaneously gain the confidence to rebel against your own femininity and begin to feel comfortable in your own skin. In this particular image, a young girl in the foreground removes her top in front of her friends, one of whom playfully covers her boyfriend's eyes. And every time I revisit this image, I find another small detail that deepens the notion of freedom these girls feel within the safety of each other. Like the classic coming-of-age novels that inspired Curlin, stories of a single boy discovering independence, these depictions of adolescence unfolding collectively are universal depictions of transitioning into womanhood. They transcend their time and remain deeply relatable.
In City of Commerce, Susanna Smith Bautista.
I appreciate how LA-based Chicana artist Arlene helps us to think deeply. about how we interact with our family photos through her own archival project following her father's recent death. She takes the ordinary photograph and carefully integrates it into her work as a performance, a ritual, elevating it to the higher levels of art, to a sacred place in our lives. She uses an old photo of her Aunt Maribel, her father's sister. She never knew her, but felt like she was always part of her life. She died before Arlene was born at the age of 22 from pneumonia. Arlene was born a few years later, and it was like she restored joy to the family. She grew up seeing photos of her everywhere, always feeling her presence. Arlene shows this connection by placing the photo on her bare back with one hand and reaching to it with the other like an embrace. She goes back in time with the kind of blanket her grandmother knitted, standing at the same high school her aunt went to. This photo has so many levels of meaning: temporal, spatial, generational, emotional. But to me, it is such a beautiful, intimate photo about how we hold memory.
In Bergamot Station in Santa Monica, Valérie-Anne Giscard d'Estaing.
Hello to everyone. So today we are diving into Patty Carroll's Domestic Demise, a series that is as vibrant as it is thought-provoking. At first glance, these photographs look playful, even humorous. But as we look closer, they reveal a deeper commentary on identity, domesticity, and the pressures of perfection. Carroll's process is as fascinating as the final photographs. She begins with a concept and sketches the scene, planning colors and patterns for maximum visual impact. Then she builds full-scale sets in her studio, using real furniture, wallpaper, household objects, and a mannequin. She does minimal post-production, just color correction, because the magic happens in the physical construction. Each image is essentially a stage performance captured in a single frame. Patty Carroll is an acclaimed American photographer whose work explores themes of identity, domesticity, and consumer culture through bold theatrical imagery. Raised in suburban Chicago, Carroll earned her BFA in graphic design from the University of Illinois and MS in photography from the Institute of Design at ITT Chicago. She has taught photography internationally, including at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago and the Royal College of Art in London. Carroll doesn't just photograph rooms, she creates a narrative. These scenes are humorous, yet they carry an undercurrent of anxiety. They ask, when does the pursuit of an ideal home becomes a trap?
In Pacifica, California, Vanessa Woods.
Hi, everyone. In 1948, Argentinian women's magazine Idilio commissioned, German-born Greta Stern, who is her dates are 1904 to 1999, to illustrate the weekly column, which was called in Spanish, Psychoanalysis Will Help You. Each week, women readers would send in dreams to be analyzed by psychoanalysts in the column, and Stern, in turn, would create unique photo montage illustrations to go along with those dreams. And they're really remarkable photo montage collages. She ultimately created 150 of these works. The magazine itself was marketed to the 1940s and 50s housewife and offered beauty, fashion, home tips, etc. But the dream illustrations that Greta created, veered away from the magazine's tone and presented witty critiques of repressed and oppressed women struggling in the then male-dominated Argentinian culture.
In this particular image, my read is that a female eye looks out and we see it looking over this very rocky and treacherous landscape filled with hands that are reaching and gripping. And that to me feels like a metaphor for the daunting patriarchal landscape of her time. Thank you.
For this image, our presenter is on a plane and cannot be with us, so I'm going to let it sit for a few seconds. We can all think what we'd like to about it while our next presenter, Zillery, prepares. Okay, let's go to next slide. In Culver City, Zillery Twill.
This photograph, which I'm sure many of you have seen before, is by Judy Dater, American photographer born in 1941, entitled Imogene Cunningham and Twinka, Yosemite, 1974. Judy Dater is an American photographer and feminist best known for portraits and her nudes. This photograph is considered among the most iconic photographs in art history. It was the first full frontal nude photograph published in Life magazine, which is pretty amazing if you think about it. So in this photograph, Imogene Cunningham, the older woman on the left, and Twinka, Yosemite, is a tonally nuanced depiction of the 91-year-old photographer who is chanced upon a naked female standing beside a gigantic redwood. Cunningham seems taken aback at the sight of the smiling young blonde, who ironically is Wayne Thiebaud's daughter, Twinka, whose coy glance, nudity, and relative height vis-a-vis that of the shrunken elderly photographer add a touch of surrealism to the scene. It is an evocation of a dream, perhaps. It is amongst the most narrative-inflected of Dater's works, and among the very few she relates to a specific artwork or moment of her past. Although this image has been referenced to Thomas Hart Benton's Rape of Persephone, 1939, where it portrays the artist in the guise of a farmer spying on the queen of the underworld from behind the vegetation that embraces and identifies her. To me, this photograph is more about youth being greeted by old age, the disparity of the flesh, the vibrancy of youth, the freshness of naivete, and the look of the wise woman at the youth, questioning if her life could have been better spent, or perhaps wanting to impart wisdom on the young woman to provide her a path or guidance to the future. In my opinion, I think Dater, using herself as the subject in her later works, predate Cindy Sherman. Dater, an artist who has a long way to go still with public recognition and acknowledgement for her feminist-focused works. On an interesting note, Twinka, which I mentioned, is Wayne Thiebaud's daughter. And ironically, at this time in 1974, I was preparing to move to San Francisco. This work has always brought back memories of my life in the 1970s in San Francisco and Aspen, you can imagine. The dense forest, the frolicking nude in the woods, reminding me of the time that life was so much simpler and freer.
In Mount Washington, LA, Zoe Lemelson.
In 1986, Mexico City-based photographer Graciela Iturbide was asked to contribute to the project A Day in the Life in America. For this, Iturbide sought to document a community of Mexican descent in the U.S. and members of the white fence gang in Boyle Heights neighborhood in East LA. In this image, Iturbide is photographing Christina, the angle of the horizon following her cool slant as she leans back to take a picture. The photograph itself is a moment of both mutual vision and exchange. A Mexican woman photographs a Mexican American woman photographing. As they face each other on Whittier Boulevard, the large bold type of a restaurant sign above Christina's head reads Cuauhtemoc. The restaurant shares its name with the last ruler of the Aztec Empire who fiercely fought the incoming Spanish colonial rule. The legacy of this colonization drew the borders that act to separate Graciela and Christina. Yet still, in this moment and through their lenses, they see each other.
And closing us out from Los Feliz, Michael Hawley.
Dorothy Lang's best-known work was made during the Great Depression, capturing the story of each of her subjects, looking life in the face and finding the still points of sadness or strength or humanity. This photo was taken 20 years after her seminal image, Migrant Mother, and her eye on humanity still persists. The defendant, Alameda County Courthouse, 1955, shows a young man maybe at his worst moment. Here Lang waited for the stillness, for the moment of connection. Variants of this photo are blurry or the defendant's face is partially visible, but this is the shot that I think she was after, the everyman defeated as he is and human. How many before him were just in this place? She asks us. It's a heartbreaking image. All that said, just look at what Lang sees as the composer of this photograph. Look at the tonal variation of the scene. Look at its geometry, the curve of the man's back, the curve of his chair, his long straight fingers, the long straight spindles of the chair back, all opposing the chaotic lines on his tie. This work is a triumph of both composition and, as always with this artist, observation of our condition. So now I'm not going rogue. I'm Michael Hawley from Photographic Arts Council Los Angeles, and I'm so happy that you are all here today, and thank you for coming as observers and as participants in the day. I think it went as well as we could possibly have hoped, and thank you so much for all your insights, all the presenters. So just a little note about PAC LA. In 2025 was a real banner year for us, and this was a wonderful way to kick off 2026. And we exist through the support of viewers like you, as PBS always says. And if anybody is interested in becoming a PAC member, Sean, our trusty guy behind the scenes here, is going to put our contact information down in the chat. It's paclosangeles.com. That's the website. And we put on this year we put on about 40 events. And an event is a walkthrough of a museum exhibition with the curator, a studio visit, a trip, all kinds of different things. And this is the third time we've done a picture a minute, une minute pour une image, and it's a great success for us. And we're just so happy that you all came. And this sort of is a prime example of the quality of the kind of programming that we present throughout the year. And so that's all I'm going to say about PAC, but thanks for being here. I'm going to toss it back over to Hannah to wrap it up, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Michael Hawley. A quick thank you. Wow, all of the presenters blew my mind. I knew you would bring it, but I'm super impressed. I owe you a heartfelt debt of gratitude for showing up and expressing yourselves so beautifully. Thank you for all who attended. Have a great 2026. This is a great kickoff for me, and we hope to see you next year. Good night.